On the ridges above Peleliu, a slab of coral tilts back, and a Japanese soldier rises out of the ground 3 feet from the man on point. There is no time to aim, no time to think. The Marine does not bring a rifle to his shoulder because he is not carrying a rifle, he is carrying a shotgun. He clamps the trigger down and works the slide, and the gun fires the instant the action slams shut. Double-aught buckshot at the range of a handshake. The ambush is over before the enemy weapon clears the lip of the hole. This is the Model 1897 Trench Gun. In the caves and spider holes of Peleliu, in 115-degree heat, it became the most terrifying thing a defender could meet up close. And a generation earlier, an enemy had called a weapon like it a war crime. For 2 years across the Pacific, the Japanese had fought the Marines the same way. Mass charges, screaming over open ground, cut down by the thousands. On Peleliu, that stopped. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, commanding the garrison from the 14th Infantry Division, did the opposite. He took the island's spine, a half-mile of shattered coral in the Palau chain called the Umur Brogol, and turned it into a fortress of more than 500 caves, some 6 stories deep, linked by tunnels, sealed in places behind steel doors. The 1st Marine Division came ashore on the 15th of September 1944, expecting 4 days of fighting. They got more than 2 months. On the first night, infiltrators slipped through the lines in the dark, some of them wearing helmets stripped from dead Marines. 3 reached a command post in the rear before they were killed. That was the shape of the war here. The enemy was not across a field, he was already inside the wire at the range of a knife in heat that climbed past 115 degrees. The M1 Garand was built to kill a man 400 yards away. None of that mattered when he came up out of the ground at arm's length. The answer was a weapon older than most of the men holding it. John Browning designed the Model 1897 for hunting birds, not for clearing caves. One accident of that old design made it perfect for the work. The gun has an exposed hammer and no trigger disconnector. On a modern shotgun, you pull the trigger once for every shot. On this one, you hold the trigger down and work the slide, and every time the action slams shut, the gun fires. Marines called it slam fire. In the open, it was close to a parlor trick. In a cave mouth, it meant a man could empty the gun as fast as his arm could move without ever touching the trigger again. Each shell threw 9 balls of lead, double-aught buckshot, every ball about 1/3 of an inch across. 6 shells in the gun. At the distances these fights happened, the pattern never had room to spread. It struck like a single fist of metal. So the Marines put the shotgun on point. Each regiment carried roughly 100 of them, and when a squad pushed into the ridges, the lead man often had one in his hands. Often it was the newer Winchester Model 1912, which slam-fired the same way, but the gun in the surviving photographs from the island is the Model 1897. The first time one spoke inside the Umur Brogol, a figure lunged from a fissure in the rock, and a single rack of the slide put him down before he finished rising. The man on point carried that gun because the first half-second of a cave fight decided who walked away. We will see exactly what that looked like. By the end of the first week, the fighting had become something the planners never imagined. On the northern beaches stood a rock outcrop called the Point, bristling with bunkers and a 25mm automatic cannon firing straight down the sand. Colonel Lewis Puller, commanding the 1st Marines, ordered Captain George Hunt and K Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, to take it. There was no room to manoeuvre. Hunt's men went bunker to bunker with grenades, demolition charges, and point-blank fire, clearing each concrete box by hand. This was not a contest of marksmanship, it was a contest of who could put steel into a doorway first. That was where the shotgun lived. The survivors pushed north into the Umur Brogol, into the caves. Corporal Eugene Sledge, a mortarman with K Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, wrote the truest line anyone ever set down about the place. There never was a front line on Peleliu. The whole island was a front line. Every cave they attacked, he said, was covered by fire from other caves, all of them connected deep inside the rock. A man could be shot from 3 directions at once by an enemy he never saw. Clearing one meant a point man going first into a black hole in the coral where the muzzle flash of his own gun was the only light. Flamethrower teams burned the deep tunnels, but the mouth of every cave belonged to the man with the buckshot. The heat never broke. Men fought in 115 degrees with little water, hands blistered on hot metal, the dead swelling where they fell because the coral was too hard to dig a grave. Into that, the close fighting went on without a pause, and the enemy had learned to wait. They cut spider holes into the coral, a slab of rock laid over a man-sized pit, invisible from a yard away. A squad would pass, and the lid would tilt, and a soldier would rise up behind them with a rifle and a bayonet. This is the half-second the man on point trained for. Picture it. A squad climbing a draw in the ridges. The lead man with the trench gun lowered his hip, thumb riding the slide. To his flank, a slab of coral shifts. A Japanese rifleman comes up out of the ground, close enough that the Marine can see the dirt on his face. The rifleman carries a bolt-action Arisaka, 1 round chambered, and he has to lift it, find the target, and fire. The Marine has only to hold the trigger and drive the slide. The gun fires the moment it closes, then again, as fast as his arm can work the pump. 9 balls of lead each time at the range of a doorway. The man coming out of the hole never finishes raising his rifle. At that distance, buckshot does not wound, it tears. The fight is not won so much as ended, in less time than it takes to flinch. It was not only the attack. At night, when the Japanese crawled out to infiltrate the lines, a Marine in a foxhole had a single heartbeat to decide whether the shape coming at him was a man or a shadow. A rifle meant aiming into the dark. The shotgun meant he only had to point it at the sound. More than one foxhole on Peleliu was held through the night by 1 Marine and 1 trench gun, firing at noises, reloading with shaking hands, waiting for a dawn that came slowly. That was the math of it, brutal and simple. The bolt action gives you 1 shot. The slam fire pump gives you the whole gun. At 400 yards, the rifle wins every time. At 4 feet, in the dark, in the heat, the shotgun ended the argument before it began. The Marines did not carry it because it was elegant. They carried it because it was the only thing that reliably won the first half second. And on Peleliu, the first half second was the only one that counted. These are the stories that get buried under the movie version. If you want them told straight, subscribe and stay with us. The shotgun's reputation did not begin at Peleliu. It began a generation earlier, in the trenches of France. American troops slam-firing trench guns cleared German positions so fast that in 1918 the German government filed a formal protest, calling the shotgun a violation of the laws of war and threatening to execute any prisoner caught carrying one. The United States rejected it outright. It remains the only time in either world war that a government tried to have a single small arm outlawed. The men who feared the trench gun first wore field grey, not khaki, but the defenders who met it in the coral of Peleliu had every reason to dread it just as much. There is no answer to a wall of lead at the range of a handshake. It was not a perfect weapon. The buckshot was useless past 40 yards. Dead weight anywhere but a knife fight, and the tropics went after the ammunition itself. The paper hulls of the shells swelled in the wet heat, jamming actions and killing primers until a man could not always trust the gun to fire when he needed it most. 6 rounds, then a slow reload. It was a specialist's tool for a specialist's hell. The trench gun outlived the war that needed it. It went on to Korea, to Vietnam, and American troops still carry pump shotguns into rooms and tunnels today. The argument Germany lost in 1918 was never won. The men who carried it on Peleliu remembered something simpler. Eugene Sledge survived the island, became a professor, and spent his life trying to explain a place he called a netherworld of horror. The airstrip the Marines bled for now carries his name. On an island where you never saw the enemy until he was on top of you, the shotgun was the answer to a single, terrible half-second. Peleliu was made of those half-seconds, one after another, for more than 2 months. The man on point carried the gun that could win them. Most days, it was the only thing that did.